How MGM Resorts International plans to open their Las Vegas casinos. I'm Chris. This is Yellow Productions. I do travel guides that are fun, informative, and entertaining. This video, it's a live stream. And in this live stream, I am looking forward to chatting with all of you, hanging out, and talking about MGM Resorts International 7-point safety plan and reopening plan. They've issued this document, which is, what is it, 18 pages talking about all the things they're going to do in their hotels, whether pools are going to be open, whether nightclubs are going to be open. They're talking about some interesting things that a lot of you have asked, like, are they going to have drink service? And so those questions are answered here. But for those of you that aren't familiar for just how big MGM is in Las Vegas, it's really big. They operate 13 Las Vegas casinos in total. They operate the MGM Grand, the Signature at MGM Grand, the Mirage, the Bellagio, New York, Park MGM, the NoMad Las Vegas, ARIA, Vdara, Mandalay Bay, Delano, Luxor, and Excalibur. And up until pretty recently, MGM also owned Circus, though Circus just at the end of 2019 was actually sold to another company. So Circus is no longer part of MGM Grand. So all of these guidelines that I'll be going through, they apply to all of these properties. And if you wanted to follow along, it's actually on MGM's press website. It's where the 17-page document is. All right, and so going through this, the first things they say when they talk about reopening MGM hotels is they are trying to give people the tools they need to be safe and responsible and create an environment designed to curb virus spread. And they say that this 7-point safety program puts your health and safety at the center of it all. So they'll be looking at, it addresses everything from employee screening to masks to cleaning and air quality to how can they have a much more touchless digital check-in experience. And I'll say that now this is the third one of these that I've done in the series. I've done the Venetian, I've done the Wynn, and I'll say that I think MGM really, because they're the last to put it out, but they've put a lot of time and thought in it, and there's some actually really interesting things in here that aren't in the previous plans that we've seen come out from Wynn and Venetian. And their slogan throughout all of this is really they want people to Vegas safely. So that's a phrase they use a few times throughout this document. One of the things people have said is they've said, Chris, all this stuff that you're talking about in this reopening series, it's going to make Vegas like we won't want to go anymore because Vegas is all about hanging around with people and being close together. And they actually address that in this document. They say our properties were created to bring people together and share common experiences because the human desire to connect is very real. We will still celebrate one another and find joy in the moment, but we must do so safely. And so MGM properties will not look the way they used to for a while, but that's not only okay, it's critically important. So a lot of people ask, Chris, are these things going to be forever conditions? I don't think all of them will. Many of them will be temporary to get us through what we are going through. But as we go through it, we will look at what, if you are checking into an MGM hotel, plan to visit one, plan to stay at one, what that's going to look like in the future. And obviously, a lot of people are wondering, Chris, when are they going to open? And actually, Michelle asked that question. What date will MGM open the MGM? The MGM has not actually come out with any solid dates that they're planning to open anything. What people are sort of planning to is they're saying, well, MGM has said they're going to open things in phases, and they've said the Bellagio and the New York will be the first ones that they're targeting in early June. Everything after that is kind of left open to interpretation. There have been some rumors that have spread about properties opening throughout 2021, but then a lot of people said those are only rumors. So those are the ones I'll share with you, are the ones that are pretty realistic. Bellagio in New York, coming out early. It would make sense that MGM Grand would open soon too, since it's actually in their name, right? So they are also looking at their casinos in Macau for inspiration about how they open. They said they've methodically reopened their properties in Macau, China, close to the area where the pandemic first began, and so they're going to adopt many of the proven practices that they've already proved out in Macau, China to their U.S. thing. So as we go through this 7-point plan, It addresses all these things I mentioned earlier: temperature checks, screenings, and then we're going to go into what they're doing in hotel rooms. We're going to go into what they're doing in casinos. So it is really quite comprehensive. So the first thing that they're going to do is screening, temperature checks, and employee training. Now, what's really interesting about how they address this is that they say they've implemented employee screening measures to assess signs and symptoms of infection and the possibility of recent exposure to someone infected with the virus. Employees currently and will continue to undergo temperature checks before entering the property. Employees are also asked to answer a series of screening questions about any current symptoms and recent exposure to COVID-19 individuals. Employees that are not well or also who reside with an infected individual will not be allowed to work on property. So now people wonder and they say, well, hey, Chris, is that same thing going to apply to guests? Because as you've heard before, the Wynn and the Venetian have said they will be screening temperatures of guests. The MGM doesn't really go about saying the same thing. The words they use is they say, we ask that guests abide by a similar self-screening protocol prior to arriving and during your stay. So self-screening sounds like they're asking guests to check themselves whether they're sick or they don't feel well, as opposed to saying that they will actively be checking temperatures for guests. And they also go on to say, if you happen to develop symptoms during your stay, that they will have medical personnel on staff and in place to assist, and they'll also have digital and physical signage to train and remind their employees of the new proper protocols. The second area in their plan is mandatory masks and personal protective equipment. So everybody wants to know, will guests be required to wear masks? I'll get to that in a moment, but the plan does say that employees will be provided and required to wear an approved mask when on one of our properties. MGM Resorts will also strongly encourage their guests to wear masks in public areas and offer masks to any guests who need one free of charge. The most important thing there is they said they're going to require masks for employees, and they are going to strongly encourage masks for our guests. Note, that means that masks are not required for guests. They are strongly encouraged. Gloves will continue to be worn by employees that require them to do their jobs, including food handlers and people who clean public areas. Now, what about drink service? A lot of people have asked, Chris, are the casinos still going to have drink service? Because if you're wearing a mask, how can you drink? And MGM addresses that. They say they will continue to offer drink service on their casino floors. They ask when customers are drinking to minimize the amount of time masks are removed. Now they also say eating, we will ask guests to refrain from eating on the casino floor, also to minimize the amount of time that masks are removed, assuming that the guest actually said they were going to wear one. John says, temperature checks only provide a false sense of security. Infected patients can be asymptomatic, which means they do not really get sick, but they can be infectious. And there was a question about if the video that I showed was from MGM. Actually, it is. A lot of these videos that I'm showing actually were released by MGM as part of the plan on their press release site, so I thought it was neat. Yaritza, so there's obviously going to be a lot of different perspectives on this, right? Some people are going to be like, I think it's great that masks aren't mandatory. Other people, like Yaritza, say masks should be mandatory. Well, certainly if you want to go to a place that masks should be mandatory or are, the Wynn, the Encore, and the Venetian and the Palazzo have said masks will be mandatory. All right. So going on to number 3, the third thing that MGM is going to be doing is they're going to be doing physical distancing. Some people call it social distancing. MGM calls it physical distancing, which I like that term better. But they will have the 6-foot physical distancing policy in place with floor guides to remind of that. They're also going to be installing a lot of plexiglass barriers. And so MGM released a video of what that looks like. These are the new plexiglass barriers that they've installed in restaurants and some of the various areas. You can see just little holes to put your money through, exchange cards, things like that. If they won't have plexiglass barriers, their employees might be wearing face shields. And also, they will put signage installed throughout the property to help guide employees and guests on how to safely practice physical distancing. Roger asked an interesting question. Roger says, will masks be mandatory at strip clubs? That's a great question. And I don't think there's any guidance come out about strip clubs yet, so stay tuned for that one. Okay, so the fourth thing in their safety plan is about hand washing and enhanced sanitation. This is something that MGM's announced that I haven't seen other hotels saying that they're doing. First of all, something that everybody's doing, they're going to clean more things, right? They're going to clean more high-touch surfaces. They're also going to implement electrostatic sprayers in their large areas to disinfect more efficiently. But what's pretty unique about MGM is they are custom building hand washing stations. So these are actually the hand washing stations that they were building to deploy out on the casino floors. And so they're not just going to have people need to go to the bathroom to wash their hands, but they will actually have a visible presence of these hand washing stations. As you can see there is a new hand washing station on the floor of the Bellagio casino. Visible, it'll have soap, it'll have paper towels, and it'll have running water, just like an actual bathroom, but you don't have to go in the bathroom to do it. So I think, for one, that's pretty neat, because I'm always one of those people that after I touch a slot machine or after I leave a gambling table, I definitely want to wash my hands. And they'll have hand sanitizer provided there as well. Okay, the fifth thing that they address is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, controls, and air quality. Why? Because a lot of people have said, what gets people sick with COVID-19 is air conditioning. The airflow, if somebody's here and they're coughing and the airflow goes this way, that could get them sick, or recirculating it makes people sick. So what MGM says is they say, well, we've actually always placed a high priority on air quality for our guests, and we've reviewed our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems to identify additional opportunities to enhance those effectiveness. What are they? They don't say. But they also say that as new science comes out related to the virus and transmission, they will be continuing to adjust the operation of their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, fully recognizing the important role that they have in keeping our employees and guests safe. Okay, so a lot of people have been asking in the chat, what do I think if they'll do away with smoking? I don't think they will, because I think if they would have done away with smoking, they would have said so in this plan. So I think the fact that they haven't said so here, I think that smoking is still in at MGM casinos. Christina really likes the notion of those hand washing stations. You can wash your hands right after using the slot machine. I think so. I think that's pretty neat, and I think it was neat to see MGM invest in those. Jeff wants to know about the World Series of Poker. The World Series of Poker was supposed to happen in June. It has been postponed until fall. Whether it happens in fall is actually hard to tell. All right. So their sixth thing in their plan is incident response protocols. What happens if somebody actually gets sick? So they say they have many protocols that are in place for reducing the chance that infection will spread, but in the unfortunate event that a guest or employee tests positive, they will activate the incident response protocols to ensure the infected individual has access to medical treatment, that the exposed areas are thoroughly sanitized, and when possible, they will notify those that have come into prolonged contact with the infected individual. Okay, the seventh thing in their plan, and this isn't the end, even though it's a 7-step plan. This is page 7 of 17 that they talk about. So we'll go more into hotel rooms, casinos, entertainment, buffets as we go. But their seventh point, these are their major points, are digital innovations. And so this one, I'm going to put up a picture right here. Digital innovations. So they're looking at streamlining the check-in process, focusing more on digital check-in. In particular, something you'll notice here, and I think is cool in this picture, is you'll be able to get a digital room key, and then if you want to get a physical room key, you'll be able to scan the little QR code at the bottom of that app at one of the kiosks in the lobby to actually print a physical key as well. So I think that's pretty neat to be able to complete mobile check-in, have your phone as a digital key, but also be able to use your phone to then get a physical key as well. And so MGM's goal is to enable customers to complete the check-in process themselves without having to see a person from beginning to end. Guests will no longer need to wait in line if they so choose. That means if you do choose, you could wait in line too. They'll have those available. Guests can confirm their arrival time, add payments, and verify their ID all before setting foot in the lobby. Once a room has been assigned and is ready for check-in, guests will receive a notification on their phone and can access the room number and digital room key in the mobile app. Guests who don't have a smartphone or don't want to use one can still wait in the line. They call it a line-reduced environment. How will that be line-reduced? It is hard to say. Victor asks, would all these digital check-in and no contact mean there's less chance of upgrades? A lot of people have asked that question. They said, Chris, how am I going to do the $20 trick? How am I going to ask for an upgrade? I guess those will be people that might want to still go up to the front. Melissa says the digital key and everything is a great idea. I think it is, though I'm somebody who would like the digital key, plus I would like the real key, just because if my phone dies, then I've got a real one, but I like being able to get that without maybe even having to talk to anybody. That's nice. Annie says, I really appreciate how prepared you always are, Chris, with the information. Your videos are always so great. Oh, thank you, Annie. I appreciate it. By the way, if you were wondering why this video was not announced ahead of time, it's because MGM just released this today, and I was busily putting everything together for the content, so didn't know what time it was going to be ready to go. So as soon as I was ready, here we are. All right. So now, there was a question in the chat about, I wonder if the medical people will be wearing personal protective equipment. So this is now the section about personal protective equipment. So they say that masks will be continued to be worn. We talked about that earlier. That MGM will provide all required PPE for their employees. An interesting change in employee process, they will now be allowing employees to use front-of-house restrooms and hand-washing stations in order to wash their hands more frequently. That was something in the past MGM would say, hey, employees, you need to use the bathrooms in the back and keep the bathrooms in the front for the guests. Well, now they're going to let them use those ones in the front. Employees now, if they are wearing gloves, actually not if they're wearing gloves, but employees who will be cleaning a guest room or enter a guest room will need to wear gloves, not just clean them. But after they finish work in the room and before entering the next room, the employees will need to remove their gloves, wash their hands with soap and water for 20 seconds before putting on new gloves or using hand sanitizer. Employees are also reminded that when they are wearing gloves, they are not to touch their face. And sanitizing and disinfecting, as you saw, they'll provide those new hand sanitizing stations, and they will require their employees to wash their hands a whole lot more. Christian says, when do I think the clubs will open? A while from now. We will get to that as we get towards the end, but it's going to be a while. I would not hold your breath for any clubs through this summer. And Melissa says, 462 people watching. Great job. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for all of you who are here watching. Okay, so and Jeff wants me to grow a mullet. I'm not sure my hair is actually going to get that long, but thank you, Jeff, for the confidence that I would look good in a mullet. Okay, guest considerations. So, again, this is on the note to say that guests will be strongly encouraged to wear masks in all public areas, and then it does say guests may be required to wear masks when appropriate physical distancing or barriers cannot be maintained. But they specifically address that to say masks being required are only in particular situations. And then they also say that employees will receive clear instructions on how to respond appropriately to potential cases of coronavirus infections on the property and how to provide full support to guests in addressing health concerns. In this document, they don't actually really go into what that is. If you've been following my other ones, like at the Wynn, they actually go through the whole process of what the temperature would be, how they're going to escort you to your room, how they're going to keep the elevators from other people going in it if there's somebody that's been tested for coronavirus. So I'm sure there's a lot more behind this one. Physical distancing, they'll have the 6 feet thing that we talked about, including while standing in line at the hotel lobby, kiosk, casino cage, waiting for elevators, M-Life desk. And at places like the hotel front desk, the business center, they're going to use every other station to make sure that people don't hang out next to each other. And then restaurants and bars, there will be more social distancing there, which we're going to talk about in detail when we get to the restaurant and bar section. Cleaning standards, they're going to do more cleaning. Every casino has said they're going to come out and do more cleaning, paying particular attention to escalator rails, door handles, push plates, crash bars, light switches, elevator buttons, countertops, basins, toilets, urinals, faucets, restroom stars, stall doors, lobby check-in desk, hallways, and business offices. They are going to deploy self-service machines in the casino, and they will clean them regularly. So the casino kiosks, ATMs, parking ticket dispensers. And they will also provide alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. All right. Now, what everybody's wondering is they're wondering about the casino. Chris, what about the casino? Okay, let's talk about the casino right here. And we'll look a little bit here at the casino. This is inside the Bellagio casino right now. You ever seen the casinos empty? Well, these are the casinos as they're empty. I don't really need that sound effect that's in the background. So they point out that due to the frequent handling of chips and cards by employees and guests, frequent hand washing and avoiding touching your face are some of the best ways to help avoid the spread of the virus. But additional measures they're going to have. They'll have those hand washing stations. They will ask guests to refrain from eating at table games and slot machines. They will suspend buffets in table game areas. And a lot of people have asked about poker. They've said regarding poker rooms, we are awaiting additional guidance from state and local authorities before determining if our poker rooms may be safely opened. So I would not expect any poker right when they open in June. What about slot machines, physical distancing? Every other slot machine will be placed out of service with its chair removed. Customers traveling together can request adjacent slot machines in the high limit rooms, or they can request seats next to each other at the table games, and they will adjust those accordingly. The number of players will be reduced according to local regulations. If you want to know the exact number of people that will be allowed at a table, you can watch a video I did about 2 live streams ago that were the rules that the Nevada Gaming Control Board is actually applying on the casinos, and that one I go into the number of people that are allowed per table. They will discourage players from standing at the tables, except for craps where people stand, and guests will be asked not to stand behind other players. And where practical, the plexiglass barriers that we saw earlier or similar alternatives will be installed at tables where physical distancing is not feasible. John's asked MGM opening date. June is likely when the first hotel openings will be, but all of them have yet to be announced. Cleaning. So they are considering options for touchscreen friendly accessories for use with slot machines, and you could pick them up at the M-Life desk. That probably means things to clean the touchscreens. That might even mean like styluses to touch the touchscreens on the slot machines. All slot machine tables and kiosks will be cleaned and disinfected frequently during busy times. I guess if you're there when it's not busy, then they won't be cleaned all that much. They will provide hand sanitizer for players and dealers at the tables, and tables in use will be sanitized regularly as well. That's what they're doing with the casinos. Now, what about with the guest rooms. Okay, so on to the guest rooms. This is what they're looking to do with the guest rooms. First of all, we talked about the digital keys. The guests have an option to enter the room using the mobile app. The guest room amenities, towels and shampoo will be dropped off in bags, so the cleaning staff won't be touching those things. Linen and towels in the room will not be changed until checkout unless requested by the guest. And areas they're going to focus on cleaning, well, you can see them right there. Handles, kiosks, switches, and controls. They are also going to be minimizing the frequency of employees entering guest rooms. They are going to employ a guest room rotation to allow enough time for proper air circulation after guests check out. That is likely somewhere in the 24 to 72 hour range. They're going to remove pens and paper from the room and all that sorts of stuff. They will be posting occupancy recommendations for elevators to lower the limit of people in elevators. When feasible, guests will be asked to share elevators only with their travel companions. The guest room attendants will wear masks and gloves whenever they come in to work in a room. All right, so they're going to be doing a lot of stuff to do enhanced cleaning in the guest rooms. Irwin says no hand sanitizer. Yeah, if you watched my video yesterday about what Marriott, Hyatt, and Hilton are doing for their guests, they're providing hand sanitizer in the room. MGM does not appear to say that they're providing hand sanitizer in the room. While they might be, that was not one of the ones that they listed here. That is not one of the ones listed on their document. And Annie, she says, no, my free shampoos. I think you'll still get shampoo because you need to shampoo. But I think if you ask for more, it'll come in a bag instead of somebody giving it to you in your hand. Okay. Now, what about the front desk? What about the lobby when you check in? So this is what they're going to be doing in the hotel lobby. When you come in, they are going to welcome guests, and they're going to offer guests a face mask. Guests can check in with the mobile app. They will have the key dispensers for guests to print their own guests. We talked about the elevator capacity. Luggage will be delivered to or picked up from guest room doors, so they will no longer bring luggage in the room. Instead, they're just going to bring it to the room. Cleaning and disinfecting, they'll be doing a lot of that in the common areas. They'll have the physical distancing, and they'll have those sanitation stations that we saw before. They are also going to do what they call enhanced offerings of digital receipts, digital folios. So instead of printing you things, they will offer just to email it to you instead. Now, what about their recreation services? Well, recreation services right here, like the swimming pool. So they say the pool lounge chairs will be placed 6 feet between groups of guests, and every other cabana will be used. They are still waiting for additional guidance before opening spas, salons, golf courses, and fitness centers. So TBD on those, but if you go when they open, you'll still be able to sit out in front of the pool. Likely you'll be able to go swim in it as well, because chlorine kills a lot of stuff, right? That's a good part about chlorine. Now, what about front of the house and transportation services? Limousines and other transportations will be limited. Employees will be trained on how to clean the storage rooms and the bell carts, and guests who need special assistance will be provided the special assistance in line with MGM's safety practices. Food and beverage. What about restaurants? So restaurants right here. First of all, a lot of people have asked, Chris, what about buffets? So they will be suspending self-service buffet-style food service. Employees will be required to serve guests. So do not expect any buffets anytime in the near future. A lot of people have said, Chris, does that mean there are going to be no buffets in the future? That does not mean there will be no buffets. Buffets will definitely be back, but it will probably be a while before we see buffets back. Digital menus will be available for guests to view on personal mobile devices. They will also be providing more prepackaged food options. And what you're seeing here, you are seeing them rearranging the dining areas to provide physical distancing 6 feet apart. They will also be having more virtual queues for guests that are not seated immediately, so that instead of having to stand in line to eat, they can get like a notification on their phone. Also, instead of getting a buzzer that they have to hold. And now, what about room service? Delivery of in-room dining will be in disposable packaging, and that will be left at the guest's door to avoid direct contact. Okay. Now, on to conferences and events. Whoop, here we go. Whoop, whoop. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Conferences and events. So they'll be doing additional cleaning and sanitizing in high traffic areas. In small meeting rooms, they'll be bringing HEPA-based air filters into smaller meeting spaces. And this is interesting. During peak times, they'll be stationing people at the escalator handrails to sanitize the escalator handrail during peak times. Retail. In retail locations, they're going to have a lot of those plexiglass barriers that we saw earlier. They will also be promoting non-cash and contactless transactions. They will just be visually verifying identification, and they will monitor the areas to avoid overcrowding. They'll also do more cleaning, wiping down dressing rooms, changing rooms, and well, what about more than just retail? What about arcades? I bet you want to know about arcades. People have asked about slot machines and they've asked about strip clubs, but what about the arcades? The arcades, they are going to encourage guests to utilize kiosks to get cards instead of buy them from employees. They are going to place items on the counter for guests to pick up if you won a prize. They're going to separate the arcade games at least 6 feet apart, and they are going to provide cleaning stations, allowing guests to use improved disinfectant to sanitize at their discretion. Employees will be disinfecting all games, equipment, and guest touch points regularly. The last point that MGM brings up is they bring up the point about the roller coaster. Everybody wants to know about the roller coaster. What's happening with the roller coaster at the New York? Well, they will have visible social distancing markers in place. They will be directing guests to store personal items in disposable bags. And instead of placing them on the floor or just placing them in the locker by themselves, guest items will not be touched by employees. Hand sanitizing stations will be made available in the locker room area. When you're boarding the roller coaster, they are going to skip every other car when boarding the roller coaster. They are going to clean the lap bars, shoulder restraints every time, and wiping down lockers and high touch points much more frequently. So that, I would say, is a pretty impressive set of things that MGM is going to do when they reopen. So it'll definitely be a different place. But the last one, a lot of people asked about this. Chris, what about entertainment? What about the clubs? When are the clubs going to open? What MGM says about the clubs is they say they're awaiting additional guidance from state and local authorities before determining when entertainment may safely resume. They're going to be developing no-touch ticketing, no-touch points of sale. They're going to have new food and beverage protocols with touchless points of sale. They're going to replace common use items at concession stands with single-use condiments. And they're going to continually sanitize high-traffic areas. So that is what they're going to do. So when are the nightclubs going to come back? When are the shows going to come back? I think that'll probably be December when those things come back. All right. Well, now it is Q&A time. And so we're going to come back to me. We're going to get the spinning question mark right up here. And so I will take some of your questions. the things I use to magically put your questions up on the screen, apparently I've done too many. You've sent too many comments, and so the YouTube API says it's received too many, and so I can't display them now. But instead, I will I will read the questions and then I will answer them. Let's see. We're going to go. Do I think that Fremont Street will have bands anytime soon? I think Fremont Street will have bands sooner than the rest of Las Vegas because it's outside. EJ asks, will hotels hold your bags after checking out if you have a later flight? I would imagine they will continue to do that because that seems like a fairly standard service. MD says it'll be more fun to stay home than it will be to go to Las Vegas with these requirements. Rebecca wants to know, what are my thoughts on how Shanghai Disney did now that they've opened? They've done very well. They sold out on their first day. I think people really enjoyed their time there, so I think Shanghai Disney did well. Traveling Through says, I'll probably wait till the shows come back. That's a pretty big part of the Vegas experience for us. I believe it, and a lot of people, that is why they go to Vegas. Annie wants to know if I think the Golden Nugget will follow what MGM is doing. I think the downtown hotels will probably be more lax than the big strip hotels, just because they're smaller, they don't have as many people. But Golden Nugget, I've not seen anything released from them. Boo Crew says, do I think the tram will still run? Yeah, tram, public transportation, lots of people being in it, small places. I mean, it depends what you mean by the tram. Do you mean the tram that goes between, there's the one that goes between like Excalibur, Luxor, and Mandalay Bay. There's the one that goes between the Bellagio and the Park MGM. There's the monorail. I would imagine those will not open right away when the hotel opens. Sheila says, Chris, what about the cards and the chips? MGM did not address those specifically, but both the Wynn and the Venetian said they will sanitize them regularly, so I would imagine MGM is going to do similar things. McLovin says, when do the pool reopen? I think the pools, at least for pool seating, will reopen right when the hotels reopen. When can you go in the water? That's probably another one that they're waiting for guidance on. Peru says, how about Old Vegas? It won't be as popular, right? You mean like downtown Las Vegas? I mean, they might be some of the first ones to open up and some of the cheapest, and you know, there are always people that stay there. I don't love downtown Las Vegas. I prefer the Strip, but I'm sure there is always a crowd there. Tim wants to know about, what about places like Circus Circus? Is it just anything goes there as usual? Circus Circus, on their website, they're saying they are in for early June, and you know, they're owned by kind of the investor that owns the Treasure Island and the Trump Hotel. I mean, yeah, it's been the Wild West, but still kind of is the Wild West. I don't know. I would not put Circus Circus on the top of my list. Jeff wants to know if I'm a hair metal fan. If so, what band do you like? I don't know if I'm really big into hair metal. I like Marilyn Manson. It's kind of like maybe like, what is that, like death metal or something like that? Christina wants to know, which plan do I like better, Wynn, Venetian, or MGM? I really like when MGM released this. They released all these pictures, and I really love that MGM released these videos too. I think that's pretty neat. So I like MGM's plan the most, I think. You know, but they got to be the last mover. So I'll give Wynn the most credit because they released theirs first. So they get like full credit for that to kind of push the envelope, and then other people kind of got to copy off them. So MGM had a couple weeks to refine theirs. Flegelfon says, are these casinos going to start offering incentives for people to go? I think the incentives will be cheaper room rates, you know, extra credits for gambling, free play when gambling. I think we'll see a lot of that when when it opens. I was pausing in my reading because I was reading the next comment, which McLovin, the Irish R&B singer, and it would be so much better if I could actually put this up on the screen, but as I said, there's been too many comments on this. I says, Circus Circus smells like pee. I think R. Kelly stays there. McLovin, thank you for that very bold comment. I appreciate it. Sarah, as if there's any news on the Cosmopolitan, I have not heard anything on the Cosmopolitan yet. Let's see. EJ, Brad, and Kai says, will Uber and Lyft drivers be required to wear masks? Good question. I would imagine so. I would imagine that would just make sense to me. But I I haven't actually seen anything that said that. April Adams says she likes the MGM plan the most too. No mask required wins my vote, and she gives it a thumbs up. The Best Benny Cake says, will it be worth going to Vegas since there'll be good deals or wait till it's back to normal? It depends what you want to see and what you want to do. Vegas is going to be weird for a little while when it reopens, but that might be an interesting Vegas to experience. If you want to experience Vegas with almost nobody there, right? How often do you get to do that? I would say it depends how far away you are, whether you have to fly, whether you have to drive. I mean, if you're in driving distance from Vegas, like, give it a go. Why not? Kevin says, we just made reservations at the Bacchanal Buffet for June 7th, which is the buffet at Caesar's Palace. Right, this would probably be a great time to go and have the buffets not be very busy. And yes, Caesar's Palace just spent a ton of money remodeling everything. Michael wants to know, what about Caesar's property? Caesar's, they've kind of been quiet on this whole thing. They released like a one-page plan, and it was really pithy. Like, they'll do more cleaning, they'll do more stuff. They haven't really released dates that they're targeting for any of their properties either. The closest I've seen is that Caesar's Palace intends to open the Forum shops at Caesar's Palace. I think this weekend. I think that's what they said. Like real soon now, they're intending to open the foreign shops. And Caesars has said when they do open their hotels, the two that they're going to likely target first are Caesar's Palace and the Flamingo across the street. Samir asks if I have seen David Copperfield. I have seen David Copperfield. It's a pretty good show. It's expensive, but it's enjoyable. Kitty asks if there's any news about Bally's. I have no news about Bally's. I haven't seen anything come out of Bally's as to what is happening with Bally's when they're opening. Cartoon Capo says, as long as the Peppermill Fireside Lounge is open, I'm good. Well, excellent. Hopefully that reopens soon. I don't think they've reopened yet. Nevada Krause says, what will happen if I have reservations for Mandalay Bay for July and it's still not open? Will they cancel my reservation or honor my price at the Bellagio if that's one of the only ones opening? Well, so far they've just been canceling reservations, but it's hard to say. But I'd imagine that's what they would do. I would imagine they would just cancel your reservation and they would tell you to rebook at a different hotel. Major Moment Media says, what about my favorite Mirage? Well, if you want to believe rumors, the rumor that came out about MGM's phasing plan was that Mirage was at the end of MGM's phasing plan. I say if you want to believe in rumors, because that's not been anything that MGM has come out with or anything that they've stated, but that's what's been going around the Twitterverse. All right, well, on these live streams, I always give away something free. And so today, what's going on? Today we'll be giving out a Yellow Productions crew shirt right there to someone who can answer one of my questions. And my question to you today is going to be, what's my question today? My question today is going to be, if you were on the live stream yesterday, then you'll know the answer to this one, which is, what kind of car do I drive? I talked about the name of my channel. It's called Yellow Productions because I drive a yellow car, and I talked yesterday and I stated the type and model of car. So you have to get the make and you have to get the model right. If you're a true Yellow Productions fan to be part of the Yellow Productions crew, then you will remember what model of car that I drive, and that's the yellow car. And that's how I got the nickname of Yellow, and that's how I started Yellow Productions. Now, while we're waiting for people to remember what that was and take the cobwebs out of their brain, Boo Crew asks if I think the buffets will be modified such that employees serve unlimited portions instead of being self-serve. Oh, and by the way, let's see. We have a winner, and the winner, right, so Vic Lau is not the winner. Vic Lau said Lexus IS, but Tony gets it right. Tony says Lexus IS 300. So Tony, you are the winner. And I wish I could put your picture and name up on the screen. But Tony, you get it. You get the Yellow Productions shirt shipped to you anywhere in the world. Some other people said it. April said it. Jay Horn said it. But just Tony was the one who said it right at first. So send me an email to chris@yellow.net with 2 W's, or message me on Facebook. You'll find my Facebook page below. and message me there. Let me know your address and what you want. If you didn't win one, well, you can buy one on the Yellow Productions Etsy shop. You'll find a link in the description below there as well. And if you want to stay tuned for future live streams, well, make sure you've subscribed, you've clicked the bell to turn on notifications so that you're notified of future live streams that I do. As new and breaking news come up, I will be sure to share it with all of you. And so with that, I thank you all for watching. It was great to hang out with y'all, and I will see you all in the next video.